Paper 7 Literatures of India, Session number 32, Session title Overview of Fixing English, Nation, Language, Subject. The present chapter, Overview of Fixing English, Nation, Language, Subject, is one of the 17 chapters from the major work titled The Lie of the Land English Literary Studies in India, written in 1992 by Rajeshwari Sundarajan. Let us now look into a brief introduction to The Lie of the Land English Literary Studies in India. This volume contains 17 essays, many of which were presented at a seminar in the University of Delhi in 1998 on the study of English literature in India, history, ideology, and practice. The main concern of the volume is how English literature is taught, by whom, to whom, and which texts make up the canon in the elite Indian urban universities. The lie of the land refers to the position of English in India in educational and other institutions, while also being a pun on the lie of teaching as opposed to the truth of reading as seen in Sylvia Call's interpretation of D-Man. The English language has a complex status in India. Although it was intended that it would survive as an official language for only 50 years after independence, to be replaced by Hindi for many reasons, it has consolidated its position. In the 1960s, the three language formula was adopted, whereby children have to learn their state language, Hindi, and English. Although English is the associate official language of the Indian Union, only 3% of the population is English speaking bi or multilingual. However, this small section of the population is the urban elite, which has almost exclusive access to economic resources and to political power. Hence, knowledge of English is perceived as vital in the struggle for advancement. The writer Rajeshwari defines the scope of the subject from its introduction under multilingual union state. Introduction to Fixing English. The study of English literature in India has been fraught with ideological paradoxes both in colonial as well as in post colonial India. In the late 1980s, a serious, systematic, and honest critical scrutiny was set in motion to study some of the basic questions regarding English literature studies in India. How relevant or valid is this to our society? What are its social and cultural functions? What is its position in institutional structures? What specific pedagogic practices are pertinent to this area? Some of these questions were debated upon at seminars and workshops. One such seminar was held at Miranda House, Delhi, titled The Study of English Literature in India History, Ideology, and Practice. This was held in April 1988. Some of the papers presented at the seminar were compiled in book length studies. One such book was The Lie of the Land English Literary Studies in India. And this book is edited by Rajeshwari Sundarajan, published by Oxford University Press in the year 1992. The essays in this volume examine various aspects of English literary studies as a discipline in Indian universities. Their broad areas of focus are situating English within British and post independence India, teaching English in the colonial context, teaching it in our contemporary context, analysis of Indian classroom responses to widely prescribe English literate texts and also examining certain material forces that help strengthen the continued institutionalizing of English literature studies as an academic discipline, that is, the publishing industry and the role and function of the British Council. The colony and the nation. Literature, we have already noted how the introduction of English education in India, more specifically of English literary studies, was intended as an ideological force. We also discussed how English literary studies were introduced with an aim to erode Indian classical literature, both Sanskrit and Persian, and that it was targeted to fashion a class of officials who would help in the running of the imperial administration and remain subservient to the imperial designs over the colony. In this scheme, yet another pernicious design by embedded. This was to legitimize and institutionalize social reform and social control in the colony. The encouragement extended to English education in India was aimed at creating a class of persons who, by the contact with British liberal writing, would acquire a political consciousness. This would lead them, it was believed, to demand social and political reforms. Demand for reforms would thus effectively curtail and nullify the ferment of a revolution. If the empire had to continue unchallenged, revolution had to be kept at bay. The crown was not prepared to face another war of independence that shook up the colonial administration in 1857. Hence, it was considered that a systematic introduction of English liberal education will divert the native population from thoughts of another revolution or any form of collective action against the imperial rule. We, thus, have to recognize the reformist impulses of English literary studies in colonial India as ideologically motivated. Many educated Indians did raise issues pertaining to social reform, be it the abolition of sati or the education of women, or later the demand for representation in legislature, etc. English education was thus effectively put to serve the imperialist agenda. At this point of our discussion, it would be pertinent to deliberate over the nature of the argument about the superiority of English in our contemporary society. The privileged position of English in our present culture, the prestige associated with English literature studies in the academy and society at large invariably pushes towards examining the political intent of the continuance of English literature studies. Do you not think that there is an elitist bias to English literature studies today in our society? Does this discipline not still keep at the toiling masses, workers, peasants, rural students, socially deprived castes, students from government schools, etc., out of this? Does it not, in other words, provide impetus to dissent and anger of the deprived, underprivileged classes and guard itself against radical change? Even a persistent resistance to purely academic issues like revision of Camillus, response to new critical theories, etc., all those could be an indication of the fact that discipline is averse to radical social change. A select body of texts, scholarly editors of those texts, literary histories, biographies of writers, travelogues, etc., materialized around the time when Britain began to give shape to its empire building project. Recent research has shown that two projects, formation of English literature as a discipline and empire building, came into being around the same time. A century earlier, English as a literary language had been developed very consciously as a national language to counter the hegemony of Latin in England. Milton, for instance, made a conscious choice to write his epic Paradise Lost in English. He had a specific agenda to pursue by writing in English. He remarked that he wished to enrich the English language to all the industry and art I could unite to the adorning of my native tongue. English in India was developed as a national language, and from the beginning it was promoted as a hegemonizing concept. However, this was also resisted by cultures within English home turf from Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. They constantly contested the official homogenized English that was touched as a national language as being far from representative or monolithic. But of course, in the colonies, far remote from the reality of resisting Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, English literature gained a homogeneous and nationalist stature. The institutionalization of English as the language of education for Indians has to be located in this context of formation of English as a nationalist language of England. Another important phenomenon that leads us a perspective on disciplinary formation of English and its colonialist introduction in India is another colonial project as this period, namely the Orientalist translation. Orientalism refers to the representation of the Orient, her culture, language, literature, and lifestyle in a stereotyped, rigid form that concurred with the Western perception of non Western identities. A series of translation of Arabic and Sanskrit texts undertaken during this period conformed to colonialist intent. It represented the native text selectively, translated select portions of the text, and created the impression of these literatures as inferior and undeveloped. Oriental scholars collaborated with the Hindu Pandits and Islamic scholars, both orthodox and insensitive towards the common people of their sects, to codify laws for Indians with a view to making colonial administration smooth and easy. In the Indian universities, English literature was never placed in the context of its association with the English rule. This was the state of affairs during the colonial rule, and it continued even after independence. Instead of viewing the presence of English literature in India as an embodiment of a colonial agenda, it became the repository of universal values and abstract virtues available both to the colonized and the colonizer. In the absence of historicization of English literature, it became an epitome of essentialist and universalist discourse. In the post independence era, this led to the easy assimilation and continuance of English studies in the Camless. The language debate. This language debate is one of the subtopics of the major essay, Fixing English. So this is the prescribed text for the students as well. And this aspect of the presentation will be taken up in the later part of the sessions in detail. Now let us move to the one more subtitle from the Fixing English essay. The scene of education and English. At the outset, we have to grapple with certain hard facts. The rate of illiteracy in India is disturbingly high. The budget allocation for education in our country is one among the lowest in the world. And the sharp divide between the privileged urban middle class and the illiterate masses is a deeply distressing one. Instead of augmenting universal primary education, checking dropout rate from schools, the practice of Disproportionate allocation of the budget to benefit the elite is grossly unjust to the vast majority. The university educated youth are not empowered either, but they remain largely unemployed. The rate of unemployment of the educated youth is increasing with each passing census. These facts throw light on the yawning gaps between university education and our national needs. The lie of the land, English in India, problems of teaching, institutes. By and large, arts and science courses of the undergraduates and post and learning English graduates have remained within the confines of the university, while courses literature pertaining to professional, technical, managerial subjects have fallen into the hands of the private sector that has ventured into the arena of higher learning and specialized study. Besides, the university arts or science degree does not ensure the student to ready job in the market. She or he has to spend a substantial amount of money and time to pursue a professional diploma or degree from a private institute in order to qualify for a job. In other words, the university degree has been much devalued. To a large extent, the irrelevance of the syllabus to pragmatic expectation of the employer sector, the failure to update, revise and upgrade existing syllabi and absence of interdisciplinarity have contributed to the erosion of value of a university degree. The undemanding admission criteria and the absolute syllabus have rendered this degree trivial and insignificant. To place English in the Indian university curriculum for humanities without going into the contentious issues accompanying it would be grossly ill advised. English honor courses tend to be studied in isolation without any adequate interaction with literatures in other languages or with other subjects in humanities. Rajeshwari Sundarajan summarizes the scenario thus. What the larger scene of education reveals, therefore, is the anomalous position of university education in a context of large scale literacy. As the site of both privilege and state controls, the simultaneous importance and devaluation of the humanities within this structure and the retention of English within the humanities in imitation of the Western model without a matching rationale for such incorporation. Thank you.